Go ask your mom, why is the sky blue? Go ask your HR director, where's the diversity, bitch? Welcome to the Audacity. In this episode, we're talking about
privilege.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, here we are.
Here we are. Welcome back.
Episode 5.
Yes.
We're here.
We're here.
You're here. Thanks for joining us again. I hope you've been enjoying things all along.
First and foremost, we'd like to apologize for how long the last episode was.
Our bad. Whoopsies. We
didn't plan on making it that long, but it just flowed and it felt right.
We have like a little outline we want to follow to keep things nice and tight for you guys. But yeah, things just got out of hand.
Yeah.
But we hopefully we brought in some like funny personal stories with also some of our sciencey background.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of sciencey background to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let us know what you prefer. Maybe you can DM us somewhere on social media, and maybe you don't mind the longer episodes, and then Case will just ramble a lot more. Maybe you prefer something shorter. So send us a little DM and we'll tailor things to you.
Yeah. Well, according to the last 3 episodes, we kind of know that you wouldn't mind a longer episode because our longest episode got like the most views.
That's true.
Having said that, even the subject was kind of saucy.
Fun. Yeah. The dating episode. Exactly. Yeah. And we have another saucy episode coming up next week. So next week, we are all going to school. Middle school, for instance, because we're going back to sex ed class.
Stay tuned for that. That's going to be exciting.
We've been doing our research, so get ready for that. Maybe you could, see what questions you have after the episode, and we'll try to answer them in another later episode. But today, we will keep things short, brief
and a little more
succinct.
Yes, and a little more serious.
That too, because like we said, today we're talking about privilege.
We just want to start off by saying that we come from a very privileged background, both of us, although we come from 2 different countries, 2 different cultures.
Yep.
2 different races.
Still very privileged altogether, right?
Yes.
So we want to make that clear. We also want to make clear, like, this is not a normal, bubbly, lighthearted topic for us.
Yeah.
But the purpose of this show is that it's us as best friends having a conversation.
About privilege.
Uh-huh. And maybe you don't have, friends in your life that you normally do that with. Mm-hmm. So maybe this is a model that you can follow and learn from yourself.
Yeah.
Because this is not a TED Talk on privilege or a master class on how to dismantle it or what are the components of it. Because we're not the right people.
We're not the right people and we don't know how.
Right.
We genuinely don't know how.
But I think there's this problem in the world where if you think only those people should be talking about it, that's really how these issues continue to persist so much. You have to be willing to be wrong with it. And we might get things wrong in this episode. So educate us afterwards. You know where to find us.
We do try to educate ourselves as much as possible. We do try to do our research as well. But like we said, we come from a place of privilege and it's very hard for us to grasp it fully.
Yeah. And scary to talk about it publicly.
Yeah.
No one wants to get canceled.
No one wants to get canceled and it's very, very sensitive.
But we are trying to be an example of how to maybe talk about it.
Yeah. Let's not even say how to talk about it. How to just start a conversation.
Basically.
And not be tone deaf.
Sure.
And kind of admit that you have privilege. Like, let's start from there.
Yeah, let's start from there.
I mean, okay.
We are both able-bodied.
Yes.
We both come from, a very highly educated background.
Yeah.
We both come from very warm, accepting, loving families.
Yeah. Indeed. So privilege is not just limited to, I would say, socioeconomic background.
Mm-hmm.
It's a privilege to even grow up in a healthy family, a family where you don't have any abusive relationship with anyone,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally, physically, or in whatever form.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a privilege as well.
Yeah, because I mean, these privileges which you have will shape your idea of the world. So if you
Exactly.
never like stop to check under the hood, see, oh, this is why I'm actually this way. This
Yeah.
is why I've benefited this way.
Yeah.
Once you can, that's just the first level. You have to identify what you have. That's what we're going to try to do right now.
Yeah.
That's the very first step you can take, because then you'll realize that other people might not have those things.
Exactly.
And that's how you can, start to build empathy for that.
Yeah.
Or start to dismantle
Mm-hmm.
systems like that.
I absolutely agree. And I think this is like a good point to start where we kind of realize that we had the privilege.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start with a very basic
Okay.
point. That is the language English.
Yes.
English is probably the most widely spoken, or maybe not.
I think it's on track to be one of the first global international languages.
Okay.
If not already.
Yeah. So English is a language that you're expected to know, in most countries at least, so that you can communicate with everyone, which is fine and all. I was taught English as a second language.
Right.
So I learned my native language, so Nepali, and English simultaneously.
Yes. And you're telling me something very interesting about that.
Exactly.
You didn't approach it as just learning a second language. How did you approach it?
Yeah. So, no, for my family and for me, I mean, so props to my mother. She hooked me up on reading books since I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
I've grown up around more books than toys, which is how I picked up languages.
Mm-hmm.
So I spoke Nepali and English simultaneously ever since I was a child, which I thought was fine and great. But then I realized in Nepal and possibly in India and maybe in the Indian subcontinent, I may be making a very wide generalized statement here, which may be wrong, but let me just focus on Nepal for a minute.
Okay.
English is never taught or learned
Mm-hmm.
as a second language.
Mm-hmm.
It's learned as an acquired skill,
Hmm.
which is such a different perspective to have.
Yes.
And so that made me realize that me having fluency in English and my peers having fluency in English, my family having fluency in English, it's not that we just know a second language.
Yeah.
We already are a level above other people
Well,
because
it's this skill
set. Yeah.
skill set you
Yeah.
have. It's a privilege that you've been taught
Exactly.
to achieve something. Yeah.
And taught like good English, not just basic English.
I know. That's why it's really easy for us to talk, because our English level is both at the same level.
Yeah. And I don't have to enunciate. I don't have to, do a lot. And that was, I think, one of the first things that were striking to me in terms of privilege, that me having fluency and me and my friends talking in English all the time as if it's our native language, or me and my family talking like that. It's a big deal for everyone else because it's an acquired skill for them.
I mean, me being born in America, I had the privilege of only needing to learn English, to have the same doors open to me as they are to you.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very, I think.
And if I would learn a second language, it would just be for fun, not for tactical, resource.
Or if you were, like, for example, moving somewhere.
Sure.
Having said that, we haven't learned Dutch.
But no, it's a privilege here that I've not had to learn Dutch. And that the fact that I can even say I don't want to learn Dutch, I wouldn't learn Dutch. And that's wild. I live in a country where that's the
native language.
The native language and the official language. But I study in English. I have international friends. That's how we're connected with each other. It's crazy that, you can get away with that as a expat immigrant these days, not needing to learn the language.
Yeah. But I think we discussed this as well, is that we realized a lot of our privilege once we had international friends.
Yes.
And we didn't realize that. This is a conversation that we've had. We didn't realize what kind of privilege we had until we moved to another country.
Right.
And we've had friends who are like first gen, or friends who are not of our race, friends of different nationality. And I would also say our exposure to the internet. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, no, definitely. The first part you said there too, it's different talking about privilege when you've never left your little
Mhm.
shell,
Mhm.
your home or your hometown even.
Yeah.
Um, Traveling is a nice way to learn those things.
Yeah.
It's also a privilege that you can do that.
Exactly.
It's not necessary to do it because we have the internet where you can learn a lot of these
Exactly.
things too. I mean, so much, we've just talked about speaking English and coming from like a warm, happy family as two little privileges we've had.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot bigger ones that are, more deeply rooted in your
Mhm.
demographic characteristics or
Yeah.
how, the, nation you're in treats your people.
Yeah.
A lot of that's linked to time and history and some sort of oppressive group.
Yeah. And I think it would be remiss for us to not mention that us coming from privilege makes us quote unquote complicit
Hmm.
in oppression, because privilege wouldn't exist if, like you mentioned previously in one of our
Yes.
conversations, that another group of people were not being oppressed.
Yes, by definition, if you have a privilege, it's because somebody else does not,
Exactly.
or to a lesser degree.
Yeah. And to realize that, I think, um, is again one of the first
Hmm.
steps in trying to understand how wrong the
Yeah,
status quo is.
exactly. And it doesn't mean it's it's not our job to start an English tutoring service for our friends.
Yeah.
But because we're now aware of this, we can have a bit more empathy and compassion
Yeah.
for things they might go through that are so natural to us.
Yeah. And I think, again, this stems from a place of privilege, but we've been privileged enough to not take up university in our home country. Let's say we can
Uh-huh.
choose wherever we want to go
Exactly.
for college. And I think studying in a college that's not in your home country makes you a lot more empathetic.
Yeah.
Um, Again, like I said, comes from privilege. So many people are not able to do that. But I think us evolving into more empathetic human beings,
Hmm.
or even being willing to learn more perspectives, also is like hugely contributed by
Sure.
the fact that we studied in a university abroad, which caters to an international student base.
Well, and then let's think about what we're studying too as communication people. Like the way we framed this episode, privilege is a conversation,
Yeah.
so it's kind of this ongoing negotiation and construction and
Hmm.
reevaluation, whether you're just like speaking to yourself about it or
Hmm.
speaking to others. But it's this thing that takes time and experience and a lot of reflection too.
Yeah.
Obviously, one way to like get thrown in the deep end is just to suddenly be around so many different
Hmm.
perspectives.
Yeah.
I mean, we had like 50 different nationalities represented in our bachelor's program, which
Yeah.
is absurd. You wouldn't have that if you studied at home still.
Yeah.
So we just got the benefit of learning these topics from primary sources,
Hmm.
really. But you can still, learn a lot of this too if you look carefully at a history book or you read about these topics online or you seek out people's conversations like this where they're talking
Hmm.
about even sometimes in small ways or sometimes in grand ways how their life's been different because of
Yeah.
privilege.
And I think we don't really realize how much the status quo favors the privileged or wants to keep the
Yeah.
privileged in that position. And this is one of the things that I realized, that even in our course, even though it's quote unquote international and
Hmm.
we have international students, the studies are very Eurocentric.
Absolutely.
And it caters to a Caucasian audience,
Hmm.
who will maintain a Caucasian atmosphere,
Hmm.
or ecosystem where Caucasian people will have the upper hand. And if you want to apply these theories or these, I don't know, strategies
Hmm.
to, let's say, Asia, because I come from Asia,
Sure.
it wouldn't work because it's culturally different.
Yes.
And to be studying in a university that prides itself on its
Hmm.
courses
Hmm.
and on its research, but is so exclusive,
Yeah, yeah.
I think that also is a privilege problem.
Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe, there's also a risk to treating this as too academic of a subject.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because universities aren't actually the best at
No.
thinking about this.
No.
That's maybe why it's better suited for a conversation between two friends from opposite ends of the world.
Yeah, and we did discuss this as well. Most researches are based in empirical evidence that is objective.
And that's based in some deeper paradigm of the
Yeah.
study or the country of the university system.
Exactly. And you want to rationalize it. And
Sure.
by rationalizing it, in definition, it means throwing out ethics and morality.
Mhm.
That does not play a factor at all. Whereas they are very culturally relevant. And we can already see without ethics and culture how fucked up the world is right now.
Yeah.
So if you base science, the most widely believed and trusted system,
Right.
on something that does not have ethics or morals, we're not doing justice to anybody. We're doing justice to people in privilege.
And that's so, my brain hurts thinking about that, because every scientific thing in me knows, like, oh, ethics and morals, that's a separate field of study. I need to find objective scientific truth.
And how ironic that we study...
Girl, look, like, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's going to be wrong.
Yeah, and how ironic that we study social sciences
Without the
without the social, without ethics or morals.
I see you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that is just... I think this might be a wrong statement to say, but again, I'm not afraid to be wrong and learn from my mistakes.
Yes.
But if we make science, if we make research ethically equitable and moral and just and, bring in biases, bring in...
talk about them. Make it clear.
Make it
Make
clear.
it overt.
Yeah. And not eliminate them entirely, then we won't just be vessels. We won't just be a statistic. Then
Yes.
it will actually result in strategies
Yes.
that dismantle the system.
Look, if you're just going to try to quantify every privilege that exists, that's a huge overload.
No, and every
different degree of every different privilege.
Exactly. And the most underprivileged person,
they're not going to be represented in that research, because who are we doing our surveys on, or who are we interviewing? I mean, you can reach them, but that's not the norm.
That's not the norm at all.
Yet. That's what I would like to change. Still, as a grad student now, looking into setting up my next research projects, to bring something in, anything that's different than the status quo.
Yeah, because sure,
that's to me almost more important than whatever topic I choose.
Yeah,
I want to go about it in a more equitable way.
And I think that is a step into... So if we have more research into stuff that represents people equally,
Yeah,
and that brings ethics and morals and people's cultural context into it, that serves as evidence, and evidence is important to change laws, to change democracy.
That's a starting step.
Yeah.
Of course, then the research can be refined over time.
Yeah.
But it also takes just a lot of casual conversation and just individual reflection.
Exactly.
And
I also believe that as much as we trust research and we trust years and years of research, we need research to be evolving.
Yeah.
We need it to be changing with the times, changing with the context. We cannot rely on a study that worked 100 years ago because the world isn't the same then.
Right. Yeah. So and that's why this is a weird topic to talk about, because it's hard to find the right approach to it. Academic or lighthearted, or do you try to cover everything? Do you have to keep it personal? Because all of this is still very personally rooted in whatever your identity is.
Yeah.
We can talk about the different privileges between being white or not, or being straight or not, or being a woman or not.
Yeah.
But that will still be unique specifically to you. Some things will be very clear systematically. But some things will still be very unique to your perspective and experience.
Yeah. And I think that needs to be studied.
But there's so much, there's a lot of, not to stand up for influencers at all, because they don't really always deserve it, but there's a lot of pressure on them to get it perfectly right, or to be perfect spokespersons for their domain.
Yeah.
that's a barrier to at least having conversations.
Yeah. For me, I think the biggest fear is to like not like my biggest fear is sounding tone deaf
Yeah.
and being offensive to people unintentionally. Intention does not matter. Impact matters. And I constantly say this. I've said this like 50 times today. That my intention might be as pure as possible, but the way it came
The
out,
delivery. Well,
and the execution,
but
that's
then make us overthinkers and perfectionists on top of that. So if it's something we
Yeah.
can't talk about
yeah,
in a curated way, that's really hard for us.
that's really hard for
And
us.
we're very non-confrontational.
Ugh.
And we come from very like non-debative households.
I think so. I think we try to avoid conflicts as much as possible because
Yeah.
we've been taught that, conversations lead to solutions.
Yes. So it's hard. Yeah, it's hard for us to debate something.
Yeah, so it's hard for us to debate something. And again, like, I just want to reiterate the fact that this is tough for, I think, anybody.
Yeah.
We've heard so many conversations and we've consumed so much content which reflect
Yeah.
on how much discrimination exists in this world and how like horrible it is.
Yeah, whether it's how people tend to treat each other without empathy and respect on like a cultural level or on a more formal systemic level, how
Yeah.
like institutions are set up to
Exactly.
underprivileged groups.
And even the justice system is not just.
Sure.
And it gets exhausting. And
The scale, the continuous nature, it's too hard to comprehend.
yeah.
Unless you start with this first step of conversation. And
Yeah.
maybe that's our takeaway message from this.
Yeah.
Is to have some sort of conversation
Yeah.
about it. It doesn't need to be an itemized list. We're not going to sit here and talk about
No.
every benefit we've had and maybe every disadvantage we haven't had.
No. And we don't want to whine and
No.
complain. And we don't want to, overwhelm everyone with facts and numbers and
Yes.
statistics. If facts and numbers and statistics got us anywhere, the pandemic would be over right now. Clearly, it's not.
Yeah, and you can look these things up on your own too. But just this idea of starting to unpack it just for yourself, even we need to put more practice into that.
We do.
And it comes from this idea, the process to start that is something we used to do as kids all of the time, which is just to be curious, so curious,
Yes.
and to ask so many questions.
Yes.
That's how you used to learn about things as a kid, and then at some
Yeah.
point you kind of stop doing that.
Yeah. And isn't that how like science progresses? Is that
It should be, yeah. But I
just
think there's
keep
a lot of
asking-
questions you're afraid to ask.
Yeah, because you don't want answers that you can't handle and you can't comprehend.
Yeah. Well, and as a kid, you want any information. You
Yeah.
can take on the world, probably.
Yeah.
I used to ask so many questions when I was a kid. Like it
Yeah.
annoyed my parents quite a lot.
Yeah.
Look, why is the sky blue stuff? I was probably one of those people who would just not let up on it. And they didn't know because like there's an answer to that, but that's not what's on your mind when you're taking care of a toddler.
Yeah. No, but I agree with you. Being inquisitive, I think, does lead us to a lot of answers.
The adult version of why is the sky blue needs to be something like, why is my class only full of white people? And why is that why we're heading in this direction of our discussion?
Exactly. And I think, yeah, again, like you said, we ourselves need to put this into practice. Don't be afraid to start this conversation with anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody. I mean,
yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It helps to start it with someone who's a little bit closer to home. We're coming at this on equal playing field almost.
true.
There's this exercise you can play. They do it in schools a lot called the privilege walk. You can look up the steps online, but I think it's like 30 standardized questions, and you have everyone from the starting point. And if it's a privilege which applies to you, you step forward. And if not, you stay in your spot. And then visually, you can quickly see by the end of the exercise, literally who stands ahead of others.
Wow.
And it can get messy in class because yes, you're really quickly measuring up to other people.
Yeah.
But it reveals some like hidden things that you would not be aware of
Yeah.
before. I remember doing this in a class on diversity I was taking earlier this year, and the first question was, "Who's a native English speaker?" And I was like the first person and the only person to step forward, and that hit me like a truck.
Wow.
So I could finally see it, and then instantly I understood what I had mostly taken for granted was probably a barrier to every single other person in the entire room, including the teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we had other questions in which, everyone else stepped forward to and I didn't. And then you kind of realize, that's just the cards we were dealt, but how you approach it and how you will talk about it and what you might do with it.
Yeah, no,
Beyond just being aware of it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I don't know if that would work in a Nepali context, to be honest, because number one, we are not racially different. So we come from the same race. We're very ethnically different because we come from different ethnic groups. And of course, the caste system, which exists. The thing about the caste system is that legally, there should not be any discrimination based on caste. But it exists. So if you plan on playing this game and
Baba Booey.
in class, then how are you going to explain, what caste is greater than the other caste if legislatively all castes are equal?
Right.
So,
but there's always, well, I don't know about that, for instance, but with other things, there's always some sort of practical implication.
Yeah.
That kind of underlies why it's important to think about these things.
So yeah, I do. So yeah, like you said, the privilege walk is a good
exercise. And you can look, because it's a standardized practice, so you can look up what the questions are and do a little walk yourself, figure out where you would end up.
Having said, but I think in an Asian context too, I think the questions need to be molded.
Different. Because look who came up with it, probably like very Western academic types.
Yeah.
But it's also, that can also be used in a workplace context too, Just going back to that being a curious kid thing. Why is the sky blue? Well, like, why does my HR department not have a diversity officer working on it?
Yeah. And why are all my managers men? And women are always in a position lower than men. Why is that? Maybe that's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
And also I don't know. I can't really say this because I don't have this unique perspective. But we also need to be empathetic towards people who are the only one in that position in a majority of other person. For example, in a position of privilege in a workplace where all managers are straight Caucasian men.
Right.
And if you are a queer brown woman, you're the only one. And you might bear the entire responsibility of representing every minority group you fall under.
Yeah.
And I haven't been in that position.
That's rough.
But I can imagine how tough that might be. So let's start with being more empathetic, at least.
First, observant. We have to question it and recognize it. Then I think that builds to empathy.
Exactly.
Then it's somehow, this is the part we're still missing. Then the final step needs to be like action.
Yeah, transformation. Reformation.
Something fabulous that we don't quite can't put our finger on yet.
No, and just be willing to learn more. I believe, willing to evolve. The simplest thing ever, if someone says to you that you using a word, you using a sentence, you doing an action is offensive, then stop doing it. That's just it. Start from there.
There you go.
Just start from there.
I have a question about it, maybe, but just so you understand why you're being asked to make this change.
Just start from there. And sure, you can ask them why this offends you, and they will have an answer for you. And once that answer is given to you, accept that answer and move the fuck on.
Well, because the fact that you've never paid attention to this just means, you're privileged enough to not understand why it's an issue.
Yeah. And that has happened to me a lot because in Nepali, there are so many words that are actually slurs. And I did not know that. Yeah. And we used to use it as insults, as like generic insults in conversations that we didn't even think that it was a big deal until I watched something that addressed this, and they were like, do you know that this is insulting a people of this
Yeah.
background? And I was like, fucking hell, my
Yeah,
life.
no, the whole language game level of it becomes interesting too. There are so many examples of
Yeah.
words, whether and some words most people are absolutely perfectly aware of what they mean, but will still use them.
Yeah.
Other words, if you really aren't told, you might not know
Yeah.
that this word has some hidden root or dark
Yeah.
meaning to it.
And that just goes
And language
to
gets
show-
messy like that. Yeah.
And that just goes to show how unaware we are, and we're not even willing to learn more about the depth and history of it.
True.
And that's just, again, it gets complicated because how much are you supposed to learn, you know?
Yeah.
Or unlearn for that matter.
Yeah.
And it gets overwhelming, but we have to start somewhere.
You start somewhere. Just, again, asking these questions, being curious.
Yeah.
I mean, the other day, right, I was shopping for clothes.
Yeah.
And I was looking for an outfit, and it was a really cute top, but the description said, like, oh, it's a men's kimono.
Oh.
And I texted you,
Yeah.
and I'm like, is this appropriation?
Yeah. I mean, that has happened to me too. There's this brand that I really like, and I love their style. Until I went into their winter section, and one of their jackets said Sherpa. And Sherpa is the ethnic group of, well, basically the Himalayas in Nepal. And that's not a clothing type. Your ethnic group is not a clothing type. So that just put me off that brand completely. You could have called it a parka. You could have called it
Sure.
a down jacket. I don't know. But
Yeah,
why?
it takes some, but yeah, you need to be on the lookout for things like this.
So, I mean, in winter, if you're going to wear a Sherpa, in summers, I'm going to wear a Caucasian. So,
What is that, like a crop top, a tank top, wife beater?
wife beater.
A wife beater, that would be a Caucasian.
That would be a Caucasian.
Gag. But no, I didn't
yeah.
end up buying the kimono though.
Good for you.
Well, it was cute, but it didn't need that label. They could have said robe,
They could have said a robe, wrap
wrap,
top.
Top would have worked for me.
Yeah, same.
Aye.
So see these small things.
Small observations like that.
Yeah.
That's like a superficial level, which is totally fine because you're still recognizing and questioning and trying to improve. So
yeah, this is a very deep and dark and overwhelmingly long topic that we can go on hours and hours about. But we just wanted to have a conversation between two best friends who come from drastically different cultures, but also very similar backgrounds.
Well, I guess similar privileges, as we've assumed.
Yeah.
If we were playing the privilege game together, like I get one step forward for male, you get one step forward for straight.
Yeah.
So we end up on the same. We end up on the same line pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I will actually counter what you just said. It is a dark topic.
Yeah.
But becoming someone who recognizes these things and consciously thinks about them can actually become a very bright process.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. It's just about
not that obviously we don't talk about this to make ourselves feel good because we were woke.
No.
I mean, yes, you can do it performatively, but that's not the point.
No.
But also it gets you really depressed when you start realizing this. But when you have the perseverance to continue doing it, you really build up a strength that, like, ethically, morally, I feel like I am in the right here for questioning and recognizing these things.
And and as long as you're asking questions as long as you're asking questions to the right people,
yes,
this process, like you said, does not need to be dark.
No. Make it explorative, make it collaborative.
Yeah.
Do it as academically as you want or do it as superficially as you want. But just start the questioning, observational process.
Yeah.
So, yeah. This episode's almost over. Go ask your mom, why is the sky blue? Go ask your HR director, where's the diversity, bitch?
I'm going to ask my mom why the sky is blue, and she's like, as if we didn't give you internet in your entire life for you to Google this, that you're asking this to me right now.
My dad would be like, what am I paying all that tuition for if you can't figure that out yourself?
Same. My sister's going to be like, I'm like in 8th grade and you're graduated from college. How dare you ask this question? You embarrassing little shit.
Oh my gosh. Anyways,
But don't be afraid of those words. Ask questions.
yes. We've probably missed quite a lot. We have some more questions to ask, I think, ourselves too.
Yeah.
Because we are privileged, so that means there are some things we'll just be unaware of until they're brought
Yeah.
to our
I'm
attention.
very ignorant about.
So we will promise to keep reflecting on it.
Yes.
You feel free to let us know your hot take or what we may have missed out on.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
honestly, it's not more. This conversation wasn't about missing out. It was just about
No.
having a conversation.
This is not meant to be exhaustive
Yeah.
at all.
But yeah, next episode we're gonna be back with
Next
something
episode we change. We're gonna flip the script quite a bit.
So it's gonna be.
To be fair, there is some privilege that will slip in there, and we'll talk about that when it's time to.
Mm-hmm. We will.
So stay tuned for that.
So yeah, but this has been good. This has been a start.
A good episode. Wow, if there's not one episode where our little catchphrase fits better, share this with your friends. Mm-hmm. You need to start having these conversations. Mm-hmm. Please share this with your enemies.
They need to start having.
This will be the only way we start to build common ground.
Yeah.
Towards that empathy. Towards that curiosity.
And towards
that
changing-
change.
Towards changing systems. There we go. Let's smash the patriarchy, you and I.
Yes, go for it.
Thank you guys so much for staying in tune with us. And
We'll see you next time.
we'll see you next time. Follow us on the audacity.fm.
All over the place, everywhere.
Except Twitter.
Every podcast host, you'll find us on Linktree. It's even the best.
So, and even on YouTube, like if you don't have a podcast platform or platform where you can listen to podcasts, find us on YouTube.
I mean, if you're really, internet access is a privilege though. If you're missing out, find a way to send me a letter in the post. I'm not going to give out my address, but I will send you a CD copy of our
We'll
episodes.
telegram you a tape.
Okay, we'll see you next week, everybody.
See ya.
Go
Bye.
ask some questions. Bye-bye.